Hey everyone, so welcome to another episode of After Work, Japan Business Time with
Rochelle Kopp
from Japan Intercultural Consulting. And we're talking about, as people do after work, we're hanging out at the YouTube ramen joint and we're talking about the state of the world. You know?
Right, and then economy and a lot of big things and trends.
North Korea, bears, you know, all the things that come up in the loose out of the office conversations, and with philosophical and ways of the world discussions. One thing that I think comes up in a lot of these conversations is that what's happened to the old lifetime employment, the jobs for life. The old days, my old dad, he worked at the coal mine and he had a job safe for life.
Right. What's going on with
kids
that now?
These days, they just jump everywhere, and companies, I don't feel like they don't treat us like we're valuable anymore, and the world has changed. People talk about this stuff all the time, and K&S TV was talking about this in the comments. So what better place to come and talk about
this?
The changing world of Japanese employment and what happened to lifetime employment.
Right.
I guess the first thing, I feel compelled to raise this perspective. There are people who say, well, lifetime employment never really existed in the first place. And what I guess first of all we have to say, what do we mean by lifetime employment? What is this lifetime employment? Does it mean that someone was literally hired until you die on the contract?
No. Lifetime employment was always limited by your retirement age, usually 60.
Oh, okay.
So it's not for your entire life. It's just only until...
Well, unless you're the shacho.
Right. Or other, I think it's what you have to be a director.
Yes.
If you're a director, you get to work past 60.
Or a tea lady. Well, no, actually, even the tea ladies will go out eventually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But okay, so but still until retirement age,
right?
So
exactly, and it was it was traditionally pretty much guaranteed that you would be there for your entire career.
Yeah,
and it was kind of a implicit promise the companies had made to people. However, it was hard to keep that up.
Well, it was hard to keep it up, but there is a question as well, from particularly the age where this became known during the bubble.
Right.
The bubble is associated with some of the worst. The bubble gave us the official term for karoshi being recognized in law. It gave us the stories that we were talking earlier about being, forced to drink yourself into hospital while in karaoke, and being sexually harassed and power harassed all at the same time. So you would ask, why would people want to work forever? Were they afraid of leaving? Was this was lifetime employment a Stockholm syndrome phenomenon, or what do we mean by?
Well, the thing is that even now Japanese really love the idea of being a seishain, which is one of these permanent lifetime employees, and whenever someone suggests that you should get rid of this system in Japan, so for example, Heizo Takenaka last year suggested that
he's a troublemaker.
Yeah, he suggested it on TV around New Year's of 2015, and people went insane.
He's an economist who was brought in as like an expert advisor, but was actually given a ministerial portfolio by Koizumi.
Yes. And
he's the architect of the Hakken and the labor law reforms in Japan.
Exactly. So he's all for let's change the labor market, but he said we have to blow up the seishain system, and everyone freaked out.
But you know what? This is the guy who, when they brought in the Hakken Shain thing, he said he's the guy who said this is only going to be 10%, and this is only going to be for a little bit of flexibility.
Well, he was wrong. Yeah.
And everybody knew, even at the time. I remember at that time, 2002. Yeah. Everyone said he's lying. He thinks he's saying that, but he's thinking everything should be this. Right. And he's just come out of the closet and said what everyone knew he thought anyway. Right. But that you talk about your sacred cows. The seishain system.
Sacred cows. And I know I did a little while after that. I was doing some excerpts from my last book in Japanese. Yeah. And I said, we really need to throw out the seishain system or rethink it. And you would not believe the comments I got. People freaked out.
Yes.
They're freaked out because for Japanese, stability is such an important thing in Japanese culture.
Yeah.
And so staying with the company for a long time and the loyalty that you have and a long-term relationship is considered such a positive in Japanese society.
Yeah. So let me explain a little bit as well. So when we say seishain, and what makes seishain equivalent to lifetime employment, basically, seishain, which became sort of the modern labor standard, it came out of the post-war period,
right?
Where there was a real surge the release from the sort of fascist, very far right-wing government period, where leftists and labor unions and all the people who sort of opposed the government during the war have been very suppressed, GHQ basically kind of gave these people free rein for a time. And there was this kind of, what would you call it, revolution is what I like, but there was a blossoming of renewed awareness of labor rights and all these things which had been suppressed sort of came up again. And there was this kind of period, and during that period they instituted these laws which basically gave Japanese workers some of the best protections from employers in the world.
And it's just rather extreme ones,
Extreme ones.
But at the same time, if you're going to be the seishain, you have some pretty extreme obligations. So if you are a seishain, the company can assign you to any job and you have to take it. They can say, tomorrow you're going to go to Kyushu and you're going to be chopping wood in the forest, and you have to say, okay, thank you. And if you refuse to go to Kyushu and chop wood in the forest, it's effectively you have quit your job.
Well, yes and no, though. There's the cultural and the social contract around the seishain deal is that you have to go.
No, actually it's legal. I looked into it. It's legal.
You can't be fired for turning down. You can
be fired for turning down a job, yes.
Okay, so what can happen to you is the company can basically make you dead professionally. If you turn down an assignment, they'll put you in the kadobe, they'll put you in a situation, they'll make you the janitor, they'll do.
Right.
But they cannot actually. It is just about impossible to fire someone. The idea of dismissal, even for cause.
Yeah, but my understanding is that if you turned down an assignment, it was equivalent to your quitting.
Okay, well, I have a slightly. I know of cases where, for example, for even things like criminal misconduct, even things like embezzlement.
Okay.
Where people were dismissed, which you would expect completely, where they challenged in the courts the dismissal, and they were they were reinstated.
Yeah, but this is just the view that you're turning down a job is voluntarily quitting. It's legal equivalent in Japan to voluntarily quitting.
Well, so
people will take jobs that they don't want to take because they feel like they can't say no because otherwise they're going to lose their job.
Well, there's unquestionable pressures all over the place, and it was built up both with legal, both with company rules, both with the fact that they would encourage people to marry within the company, families would be trapped in there. Losing your job was losing your life.
Right. And also there's low fluid labor markets, you can't go look anywhere else.
Yeah, and everything was unionized, and unions would cooperate with management, and there was this whole kind of thing through the whole growth period. But the point being, for the people who stand up for it, the people who say it's outrageous that you challenge the seishain system, the thing about the seishain system is that, and the reason that employers wanted to target and bring in these labor reforms, is that when you had a workforce with excess workers in it, you had no ability, even like I say, even in extreme cases, to fire people for cause. The ability of companies to dismiss employees is almost zero in Japan.
Exactly.
And that's considered like a basic line, a foundation of protection of workers and from abusive employers.
And it keeps societal stability.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not just the stability, it's also about just protection and safety from these sort of employers, and from the socialist perspective.
Right.
And so the idea that this is being replaced with a system that's designed that people are on temporary contracts is basically removing all of the protections that they've always had.
Right, exactly.
And these protections would essentially mean that basically you could be a salaryman who sits at a desk and reads the newspaper and is not productive at all, will make a sales call a week and whatever. And, literally the old guys who are just standing around that aren't productive and people don't want around or even like. But that guy can stay there until he picks up his pension.
Yes.
And be fairly comfortable that he's safe in that, even if he's not well liked and he's not doing a great job.
Which creates so many issues, right? Yes.
Well, so people like Hazel Takinaka and commentators like yourself also point these things out. It has, the burden it puts on the overall company and the viability of companies, which are starting to collapse.
It's huge.
Do you sacrifice 5,000 jobs because you're carrying 500 people who shouldn't be there?
Right.
But at the same time, what is it for a company to get rid of the jobs of 500 people when they've worked there all this time and they should be protected too?
Right.
There are these different values which are conflicting.
Exactly, and it's there's just so many issues with how the Japanese labor market is set up now. It's really kind of very warped from an economic perspective.
Yes.
And where do you even start to change these laws? And basically, Abe has talked a lot about, we need to change these things, but he hasn't had the guts to try and really make it happen.
Yeah. Well, he's taking baby steps with it all, isn't he? Yeah. There's no question that his party, though, has been the driver of, and will continue to be the driver of. But the thing is, even already, the Hakken laws, which were done 10 years ago under Koizumi, under the guise of trying to save companies like Sharp, which were at risk of collapse, and a lot of major name corporations. Toshiba is probably at risk now, and every time they're at risk, they're like, this becomes a socially acceptable time where
you can say, hey,
we're cutting off the arm to save the body.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But that's literally the situation a lot of these companies are now finding themselves in. So it becomes more acceptable to do. So things are dramatically changing, and so it's changing. But the thing is, and what people are aware of, when people are acting outraged about this, they are afraid, and I think they're accurately afraid that once, even for this sort of emergency justification, once you give that away, you're not getting it back.
Right.
These are unique. These are globally, Japanese workers have some of the strongest protections.
Right. And
anywhere, and once you give them up, they're not going to be reinstated when the economy's good again.
No, exactly. Well, I think the thing is, from my point of view, I think a lot of, because they've had these very strong protections, a lot of Japanese seem to have this really idealistic view of what a company owes them.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not sustainable, right?
Well, even the concept of what a company is and what the purpose of a company is.
Right.
There is this very socialist mindset. Obviously, in NHK surveys, where a majority of people in Japan think companies are owned by the workers and their purpose is to provide the life, is to provide the life salary, the livelihoods of its employees.
Right. So much for shareholders, huh?
Shareholders absolutely employees first, or maybe employees or customers. Shareholders absolutely last, and you can understand this in a country, in a system where you had internal and joint shareholdings and so on,
right,
as well,
right.
And and employees would buy shares out of loyalty to boost up the company's capital. So, activist shareholders who come in and say, "Pay us a dividend," and this is treated as outrageous and immoral behavior. When these people started coming in. Yeah. They fundamentally, for a capitalist country, it's really not very capitalist. Although it is changing.
There's a lot of pressures on the system, and then the thing is, where do you tweak it?
Yes.
Where do you start to make the change? It's not an easy question.
Yeah. So this thing is, I think now, most young people who are joining companies now, one, they don't expect to stay in the same company until retirement.
No, they don't.
And they certainly don't expect to receive a pension at the end of it. Everybody's pretty much dismissed that the Japanese pension system is not going to survive.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like Social Security in the U.S.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So it's kind of, and there's been this comment that young workers nowadays are taking the training that they give and they're going off to some other company, and people are taking this as disloyal. But for my money, I think they're being smart because they're reading the situation, frankly.
Well, they're taking charge of their careers.
Yeah.
They're taking charge of their careers, and that's what I think Japanese need to start doing.
Yeah. And it's interesting how you've got this thing, you've got the government, the labor reforms, but at the same time, you also have a generation of people coming through who just have a completely different take on everything and are just adapting naturally and doing this thing sort of more organically as well. It's happening at the bottom end of the market. So it's a really interesting, the ground is just shifting everywhere, and it's really hard to see where it's going to come out.
Yeah.
It's just the whole pattern of how many young people, university grads, don't even want to join big corporations anymore. They want to join small corporations. They're happy to work on a lower wage.
Even people want to be entrepreneurs. That's new now in Japan.
Yeah.
So, all these guys from Todai, they want to start their company in their dorm room. They want to be like Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah, in their own little baby step type ways. But it's happening. It's happening. It is changing. And I guess that makes it an exciting time to see what's happening. In terms of what I think about what it's going to be like for my son, there's some scariness. It's definitely changing, but at the same time, there's new opportunities that are coming out, and maybe some of this energy that was lost. There used to be all this energy after the war, and when when all these things were built up, the dynamism was definitely lost. This is what we've been seeing through the 90s and the 2000s. Maybe we're going to get it back.
That would be nice.
That would be nice.
Yes. Let's hope for that.
Philosophical discussions after work. This is what we do.
Yes. That's what you do when you drink beer after work, right?
That's right. So, come back next week for another episode of Japan Business Time After Work with
Rochelle Kopp.
From Japan Intercultural Consulting. But we'll be back probably next week with the same clothes once again.